All right, let's get started. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on your time zone. So my name is Pawan Khera. I'm the director at USMLE Sarthi. Very excited to welcome you all to this webinar today about the residency match trends for the season just gone by and what you can expect in the coming season, what it takes to match. And we have a very esteemed panel of guests today. Dr. Atoot, who's a Transitional Year Program Director at Hackensack Palisades, Dr. Seunguo Weissman, who's the Director of Clinical Research at the same place, and to cap it all, our match students, Pelumi and Seunguo, and we will have a couple of other students who will share their journey and give you tips on what it takes to match. So as we get started, welcome to our panel. Thank you all. And I'll request Dr. Weissman to kick it off and introduce himself, give us some idea of how the previous season was, general trends, what kind of applicants he and Dr. Weissman saw that were successful. So Dr. Atoot, over to you.
Go, Dr. Atoot. Yeah, you could start off.
Yeah, so first of all, very, very nice to meet you all. It's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you, Poam, for setting this up. I think these tools from Sarthi are absolutely helpful to future residents and future prospects. So obviously this match was very competitive this year. You guys saw the trends. There were not as many unfilled spots as we had anticipated, I think. Last year when we did the interviews virtually, there were a lot of unfilled spots that IMGs were able to fill. This year, there weren't that many, except in emergency room match, which was a little bit of a surprise. But overall, for internal medicine, there were not as many spots as we had anticipated. So the people that did well were, generally ones who did well on the USMLEs, ones who did a lot of clinical US experience, and hopefully we'll dive into that a little bit more. Today we will show you a CV of I removed all the names, but we'll show you a real life CV of an ERAS of like what we see as program directors, what we see when somebody posts an application, what it kind of looks like on our end, so we can walk you through that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Atoot. And yes, to our audience, we will dive deeper into the ERAS CV and the various sections and what program directors like Dr. Atoot look for in the CV. So that's primarily one of the agenda items. Dr. Weissman, what were your thoughts on the season just gone by?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you everyone for being here. Thanks for taking the time. I hope you'll benefit from the content and everything we're going to discuss. It was interesting. What shocked me was the emergency medicine vacancy spots, which is an interesting point to note, the fact that perhaps AMG's American grads are shifting away from emergency medicine. That's one thing we saw. Another thing we saw was that the IMGs that matched had a lot of experience and some very good research. That's kind of what I saw from my end. A lot of experience. Obviously, scores have always been important, but again, because of the step one being pass fail, I definitely think a lot of us have noticed the shift to more experience, elaborating on their research projects, elaborating on where they did their training, elaborating on their character traits on the actual interview itself. So that was all seen as well, and actually that may be to the advantage of a lot of applicants. So I guess that is good news for IMGs.
Thank you, Dr. Atoot, Dr. Weissman, for setting it up. And now let's move on to our successful students who are there on the panel. So starting with Pelumi. So what I want to ask you is an overview of your journey, the challenges you faced, and how the rotations and research, they were helpful for you in the match. So if you could give our audience some overview.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. My journey has been a long one, I must say. I began like in the year 2020, and with this my step one. At that time, it was not pass or fail. It was still a numerical based test. And at the time, it was also the period when there was the lockdown, so it was quite tough to have my books. Something got stopped in transit, so my prep was a bit affected as well. So that's kind of affected my my scores. I was able to pass at the first attempt, thankfully, but my scores were not up to what I wanted. Then for my step 2, things got a bit better, and I did my step 2 last year. Then as at last year, step 1 was pass and fail. So there was a much more emphasis on the step 2 score, right? So I was able to get a good score in my step 2, and I think it's very important, especially for international medical graduates. After which I enrolled in USMLE Southeast tele-rotation. Then in August 2020, it was headed by Dr. Atoot and Dr. Simcha, who they are here with us, and they were able to give us insights into the way medicine is practiced in the US. We learned many internal medicine topics, and we were also able to also have tips on how to prep for interviews, as well as how to also apply. And I think the experience then was very important in my journey. Then came application season in beginning September last year, and it had a lot to do with extensive program research. So I had to do a lot of program research to see which programs met their criteria in terms of year of graduation scores, and all that. I was also involved in a bit in some research as well, and I think this helped my application, just to be more competitive as well. So I think my experience has been long, and also has been met with some difficulties in terms of time, in terms of the lockdown. And I think this experience with the SATI was really, really helpful in terms of advice, and also to get US-based letters of recommendation, I think, which was also a strong component of that experience. So I think, yeah, that was it.
Thank you very much, Pelumi. And to our audience, while we'll take questions in the Q&A session, I just want to, give it out to you that we have rotations and research that are headed by Dr. Atoot, Dr. Weissman, inpatient as well as some outpatient rotations, excellent rotations. So my team will send out a link in the chat. You can definitely look at it and let us know if you have questions. Thank you, Pelumi. So Seunguo, let me go to you the next and tell us a bit about your journey, how you overcame some of the challenges, and how some of the US clinical experience and research may have been beneficial to you in this journey.
Yeah, thank you. Hello guys, my name is Seunguo. It's really glad and it's my pleasure to meet you guys all. Before I start, I have to say a little bit, excuse me, there's a construction going on outside my office. So please bear with me. I'm so sorry about that one. So my profile, I'm graduated from Caribbean Med School. So I did all my clinical rotation in US. I graduated in 2019. My USMLE step 1, step 2 score was not very excellent, was kind of in the middle. So, and then once I graduated, I didn't apply for residency. Before I did, I got an offer from my PI who is working with me right now as a research postdoc. So that's what I'm doing for the last 4 years. And then I think about it and I want to go back to clinical. So I did try applying to internal medicine residency this year. but I know that I was away from clinical field for a long time. So I try to gain some fresh experience as well. So I contacted USMLE Authority and they offered me one spot with Dr. Wiseman and Dr. Atoot. So I took it last year. I think both Dr. Wiseman and Dr. Atoot wrote me a letter of recommendation. I think they helped me a lot through the journey. So one of the hard thing this year, it was the interview was being done over the online Zoom. So I'm much more, I prefer like in-person interviews so I can like see their expression more carefully and I can use body language and everything. But like when I'm sitting in front of a camera, then like it makes me more nervous that I'm talking to a wall or something. So, but like, yeah, that was a challenge. Only way to get over it is like practice, like look into a mirror and then like talk to myself and like try to write a script and like try to improvise it. So that was my way. And I think since I was in a research for last 4 years and like did publish few papers with my PI in a internal medicine field. So I think that helped me a lot as well. So I mean, I know like step score is really important, but like once you write it, you cannot change the score. So you have to work on the area where you can change, which is a research experience or letter of recommendation with a good doctors or like clinical rotation in US will be really helpful.
Thank you, Seunguo. Much appreciate. Areej, let's go to you. Very eventful journey. So why don't you talk a bit about that and the challenges?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr. Wiseman and Dr. Atoot. I started back in 2011, so I've had quite a long journey, and I had financial troubles during med school, so I had to take time off and had to restart again. Then I graduated in 2018, September of 2018. Unfortunately, I did have low step 1 scores, but I passed on the first time. On step 2, I spread myself way too thin. I was taking, I would try one course, do well, come take the exam, and I would feel that I wasn't prepared. And kept trial and error, unfortunately, not something I'm very happy about or proud of, but it was a long struggle. In clinicals, I had my US clinical experiences in Houston with Methodist and Houston Medical Center. And those were great, but after I graduated, I needed to do externships again. And I found out about USMLE Sarthi, and honestly, I'm so grateful because not only is it a very academic program, Dr. Atoot is wholeheartedly invested in students and teaching. And for those that have fortunately matched, which I'm one of them, and I'm very grateful to you guys, you'll see that during academics, which is on Friday, they'll do didactics. And it's a full day of learning and other students teaching. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot during clinics. He's constantly teaching. And you see that in not just in how he's doing it. Please excuse me, I'm sorry. There's background noise. You see that in his, that he's not just there to get you through, he's there to teach you. And he wants you to know the fundamentals of what you're learning and how you're practicing, because ultimately you're going to get a case that you're not familiar with, and you're going to have to go back to your basic knowledge and you use that and find your way on your own. It's not going to be textbook material. It's not going to be the typical case that you see with multiple choices. You're going to have to, use your clinical knowledge and come up with a diagnosis and management. And that is something that I honestly did not see on that level of, his passion shows. It shows in his teaching, and it shows that he wants you to understand to be a better doctor. And that level of dedication I didn't see in the 2 years of doing clerkships. They were all great. They were all great professors and attendings that I worked with, but it shows. And if anybody has a chance to do an externship with Dr. Atoot and Dr. Weissman, that would be amazing. Now, Dr. Weissman is also a whole nother story. I also got the chance to do research with him, and I did the externship for internal medicine that was with Dr. Atoot, with Dr. Weissman as well. And Dr. Weissman, again, is a great teacher. He takes the time to just sit down, and this is all on his own time, to sit and go over case by case, explain to us how the other residents could have done things wrong, or how to learn from them, and how to, look at the mishaps of medicine and try to improve. Sorry, I'm stuttering a little bit here. I'm getting a little camera shy, but yes, they were both very, very great. His research also elective is also great. So I just finished with him, and I might actually do a publication. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's honestly, they're all great. I got in late in the game, and I was fortunate enough to get an interview. As you guys have heard, I did not have stellar background in my scores, so it really helped to get that externship, and it helped me to showcase my abilities in clinic and how I am. And I was fortunate enough to get an interview last minute, and here I am starting in July. So guys, don't give up, and put your heart there, put your effort in. If this is what you love, if this is what you're passionate about, don't give up just because of scores. You have to put your foot in the door, get into an externship, maybe a couple. I've seen people in clinic or with Dr. Atoot and Dr. Weissman that did 6 months of externships. If that's what you need to do to get there, do it. Just don't give up. And thank you guys. I'm sorry I went on a rant here, but I feel so passionate about this externship and what USMLE Sarthi did for me. And I'm really, truly, truly grateful. Thank you guys.
Well, thank you, Areej. Very, very inspiring story. Confident that this will motivate other applicants who may have some doubts. But thank you. Thanks a lot. And to our audience, there is a 6-month program also that Areej mentioned. So you get a combination of 3 rotations, 1 tele-rotation and research. So that's what probably she's referring to. So if you're interested, my team can send you more information. But thank you, Areej, and to the student panelists. If you want to stay back for the rest of the session, feel free. We may have some questions from you from the audience. Now let's dive into the main session with Dr. Atoot, where we are going to dissect an ERAS CV, and you will see from the eyes of a program director and other reviewers like Dr. Weissman on what a program looks for in the CV. So Dr. Atoot, I think you should be able to share the screen.
Okay. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can see the ERAS CV.
Okay, great. So first of all, congratulations to all 3 of you that matched. Phenomenal work. I got to work with all of you, and I think all of you are excellent doctors. You absolutely deserve the success that you've had. And Areej, she won't be thanking us in July when she's starting with us. She'll be, hopefully we'll put her to work. But congrats to everybody. And this is, I think it's a good testament, guys. Like, we created these programs to help all of you. Like me and Dr. Weissman, we really truly believe that it's an insane system that all of you guys are doctors. We have a shortage of doctors in the United States, and we still can't fill them, right? And so all of you guys deserve a spot, and hopefully we just have to get you through the system somehow. So even if you don't match year 1, year 2, don't give up. There's always next year, but just keep improving. So this CV is a real resident CV. I got his permission to show it. Obviously, I tried to remove as much information about him as possible, but I wanted to kind of share with you what we see when you guys apply, so you kind of have an idea. So let me give you a little bit of background about this student. So he took all of his examinations. I have the scores here. Okay, so he had no attempts on his exams. He took step 1 in 2017 and he got a 216. So he passed with a low score. In 220, he took step 2 and he got a 246, good score. And then in 2022, in 2022, he got a 226. Okay, passed all of them on first attempt. So as you could see, not phenomenal scores, not low scores. He's halfway in between. Okay. So when you guys see it, when we first take a look, it'll give us obviously the name of the person. If you have a preferred name, you can add that here. So for some people that have very long, complicated names that might be difficult for interviews and things like that, you might want to put a preferred name that might be easier just to kind of like conversate if you wish. It has their IDs here, where they went to medical school. It has his date of birth. This is optional. You don't have to put that in. But most people do. But if you feel like it might disadvantage you, you don't have to include it, or if you feel uncomfortable. It tells us if they're seeking visa. So for example, he needed J1 sponsorship, which our program has. But for example, like if you're a US citizen, it'll just say US citizen, non-visa seeking, right? It tells us how he identifies. So he identified as white Caucasian male or Middle Eastern male. Their phone numbers are here. Guys, please, this is a big one, right? Your email and your phone numbers, you really want to make sure you have numbers that are accessible, and if you're international, that you can be reached. There are many times where we can't, for example, like we'll send an email invite and for an interview and the person doesn't reply because let's say they put the wrong email. So we'll try to call them and that number, is international. So we can't, they don't pick up, and then you lose an interview that way, right? So you want to make sure that whatever number is here is a number that you're absolutely reachable, and your email is correct. Double check that information. It tells us if you've had any military service in the past. These are obviously all where the red flags would be. It tells us if you've ever had a misdemeanor conviction in the United States, a felony conviction in the United States. This will be flagged if you put yes. It tells us if you're ACLS or PALS certified and when those will expire. Ideally, you want to have these as most residency programs will have you redo them as part of your orientation anyway, but it's good to have that just to show that you're certified. So this is the other portion that we would see. Okay, so where he went to school and for how long. So he started in 2013, finished in 2019. He graduated in 2019. It tells us if there was any interruptions in his training. If he clicks yes, he would explain that, why he had some interruption. So some people that maybe took like 5 years, 7 years to graduate from medical school, they may have to explain, okay, like I took off some time or I had a family reason. You might have to explain that here. He did not take time off, so he doesn't have to explain it. Medical school honors. So for example, he was in a dean's list. He won these awards that you would place here. Memberships and honors. So these Alpha Omega Alpha is an honor society that's present in the United States. Most international schools do not have it. So this is not something that's going to apply to you guys. This is mostly for American graduates. Same thing for the Gold Humanism Honor Society. I don't believe most non-US schools have them. But if you have certain memberships, like he's a part of the American Academy of Physicians, American Academy of Internal Medicine. These are things that you can sign up for yourself, like to become a member of these. It's a little bit prestigious, and it shows that you're constantly reading, updating your knowledge, because to be a member of these, you have to continuously submit CMEs. So that means you're probably somebody that's actively studying. He's an active member of the Jordanian Medical Association. So anything you think that would apply, any sort of society you're in, you would put it here. Okay. Now, education, for him, there's nothing here. But if you're somebody that was educated in the United States, it would tell me, for example, where you went to undergraduate school, where you went to medical school, and the dates that you attended and the degrees you've earned, and in what majors. Okay, so let's go to the other side. Okay, oops, sorry. Okay, so here we go to his work experience. Actually, we missed one. So, okay, so this is, he's an active resident with us. So you could see here he would put if you've ever trained or completed residency in any program in the past, or if you've completed residency in your country, you would put that here. So work experience would include, so for example, he's a PGY1 resident, right, under my supervision. average hours worked, and then he would put a description of what the residency looks like. So where he rotated, what he actually did, etc. And under work experience, guys, would also be your externship. So this is, if you're an international graduate, this portion is extremely important. We want to see, where did you work, right? What kind of experience did you have? What were your responsibilities? So for him, for example, he worked in Qatar, right? So I will tell you, working overseas is not as important as working in the US, because you guys are applying for US positions. So you want to have clinical experience here. If you've done experience outside, I would include it. So if you're in India, for example, and you're volunteering at a clinic there, or you're involved in tuberculosis clinic or whatever, right? I would put that there, right? But by itself, it's usually not enough. You want to also have some US background, showing them that you're familiar with the system here. So he worked in the Ministry of Public Health in Doha, again, that's overseas. Sorry, let me see here. Okay, so here, for example, he has some clinical experience in the United States. So this is at St. Joseph's. This is a rotation that we offer. So he worked with Dr. Bagal, a gastroenterologist. Here, this is Hamad Medical Corporation. As you can see, this is in Doha. He was a resident there. He completed 1 year of residency before he did our rotation here. And then obviously he put a schedule of what he did, and he described it. Let's keep going. So he had Heroes of the Hearts, Manama, Bahrain. This is in Bahrain, where he was an instructor. Okay, this is his, and then he described what he did there. He was teaching medical students. Research experience. So for example, I'm going to show you how this is maybe a little bit of a red flag for me when I was evaluating his rotation. So when I interviewed him, this is something that I asked about, right? So notice he did a research rotation, right? So he did like some research months from almost, half a year under the supervision of this physician. And he described what he did, writing proposals, performing literature reviews, etc. But then when I went to his, what you'll see at the bottom is he has no publications, right? So to me, guys, if you're going to do a research year, right, you really want to get something out of it. So when you do a rotation with Dr. Wiseman in research, right, you're going to most likely publish, because we publish a lot, right? So you really want that research year, that research experience, to give you some fruition. To just do a research year and not have any sort of clinical literature published, or at least submitted to a conference or presented at a conference, would be kind of like, a little bit of a red flag for me, because that means it was not a productive research year, right? Here again, he did another research rotation in Doha, in Cornell, in their campus for 2 months. But again, same thing. He just collected data, but nothing was submitted, right? Okay, let's take a look here.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just interject that one point, I think that's very important also. When I'm reviewing CVs, it's almost like let's say you did 6 months of clinical experience in the US, and then they ask you about your letters of recommendation, and you have no letters of recommendation from a US doctor. So those 6 months you did clinical experience, what did you do wrong that did not lead to the fruitful letter of recommendation? That similar type of thing. Like, you want to have some sort of publication at the end of the research, or else, or at least you submitted it to a journal and put the journal there, which means you really didn't take it to the end and the finish line, which could show a little bit of, laziness or lack of intuition. So this is something important.
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
Dr. Weissman, let me just ask you a related question. I know you've been invited to write a review for an international top-tier journal. Why don't you talk to us about that a bit, and how research is important, building on what Dr. Atoot said?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Just real quickly, I was sharing with Puan the other day. So I got actually invited by the World Journal of Gastroenterology to write. So different, like if you're someone who's, I don't want to say known in the field, but if you're someone who has some research in the field, some of the journals will reach out to you and invite you to do a review article for them. And I was invited to do on pancreatic cancer, the effect of the microbiome on pancreatic cancer. So this is something that, there's can't say guaranteed, but the journal will take very seriously and expedite review on when we submit, because they invited us to do this paper. So that's something that, I shared with Puan, and this goes back to, when you're working on research, you're learning methodology, you're, taking the time to work on a manuscript, you want to be able to submit it for publication, not just have nothing to show for the month or the year that you did. So yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you. So, sorry, Dr. Atoot.
No worries at all. Please feel free to jump in, guys. Anybody who has any thoughts. But so here, as you could see, at the end, there's a section where it says publications. And in here, in this section, it would say, for example, okay, what is, if he did publish something, it would show something like the name of the paper, where it was published, the authors in title of beginning to end, and it would have maybe a slight description of maybe the paper at the bottom, right? It can also say published or submitted. So for example, for you guys that are applying, some more, the more top tier journals take time to review submissions, right? So if you submit a paper, you may not hear from them for 2 months, 2.5 months, right, before it gets published. So that's okay. That's all right. So as long as it's submitted, you can put it on your CV. Okay. However, if it's just something that you're working on, but you haven't even submitted it yet, it can't go in this section. Does that make sense? And if it's published, obviously that's even better and better. So you really don't want to have this section empty, especially if you've done research years, right? So hopefully that will help. So I believe Poam, so that's it. That's kind of what it looks like on our end when we look at people's CVs. We also obviously get a script of their USMLEs. We get a copy of their letters of recommendations, and we get a copy of their personal statement. And that's it. That's everything we see when you guys apply.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Atoot. Maybe related question. So you see the CV and the experiences. Then can you talk a bit about letters of recommendation? You expect some letters from US rotations and all. What do you look for in the letters?
Yeah, so I think I've went over this before, but I think this is an important topic, right? So there's like kind of like a tiered system, and everybody will view letters of recommendations differently, guys. It's a very subjective interpretation, but I'll tell you as a program director how I personally view it, right? So I tier them with my team. So the lowest tier letter that you can get is probably from a non-US physician somewhere where you're practicing, right? So an international letter, right, vouching for you, and that's good. But the problem is, you're trying to apply for residency here, so you want a doctor that's in the US system that's vouching for you, that says you're good, right, and you function well in the system. So the lowest tier letter is an international letter. The higher letter would be a US physician somewhere in the community that's not academically involved. So let's say Poam set you up with a rotation somewhere in like Wisconsin, for example, with a doctor that's functioning in the outpatient setting. He has no connection to residency. He doesn't teach medical students. He doesn't teach residents. So he's still a board certified physician. So a letter from him is good, but a better letter would be if you went to like a residency program, right? Or for example, if you're rotated with program directors, faculty members, or chairs of departments. Those letters mean more, especially in the subspecialty of what you're applying for, because those people who are academically involved, like they know what the residents' expectations are. They train them, and so when they see somebody like you, they're like, okay, this guy can do well in a residency program. I'm going to write him a strong letter of recommendation. Does that make sense? So,
yep.
So in order to be competitive, guys, now you really want to get strong letters of recommendations from strong faculty or program directors or chairs of departments that can connect you. And obviously it's better because if they see my name, for example, or Simka's name, they may recognize us, like we're people that may have met them at conferences. They may call us directly and ask about you. That happens all the time. And that way that you get more connections.
Thank you. Dr. Weissman, let me ask you about the various journals and the research. What journals are you targeting in terms of their impact factor, and what really stands out when program directors view the application? So talk to us a bit about your research and the type of publications.
Yeah, that's a good question. So ideally, you want to get into a journal that's going to be PubMed indexed, because a journal that's indexed in PubMed is a journal that has a reputation, a name, is respectable. Impact factor is great. Impact factor just means like how many times the paper was cited over average over the last 3 years. The higher the impact factor, the more prestigious the journal is. For residency programs, the faculty who's reviewing it likely will hear of these journals like world journals or the Journal of Clinical Oncology, Journal of Clinical Infectious Disease, Journal of Clinical Gastroenterology. These are journals that are PubMed Index, Impact Factor, and that's the only journals that we'll, submit papers to, that are prestigious. So that's something to keep in mind. Some publication in a journal that no one has heard of, that's not PubMed Index, isn't going to be as powerful. Although I will mention that, as long as you have research, and in the publication section, it shows this is the paper, this is the title, submitted, or whatever the status, accepted or published, whatever the status is less important. The more important thing is that it's in the publication section as you worked on a paper and this is the journal it was submitted to or accepted in, and that's a journal that's PubMed Index recognized. And that's the only journals that in our research program, when we do the course, that's at the end of the course, we worked on a paper and we'll submit it there. We're not going to, submit anything that's not academically rewarding. So, that's something that's important. And I can almost guarantee that, students that have had publications that on their interview, that was a prominent topic of conversation was, oh, tell me about this paper. I see you published in the American Journal of Cardiology. Tell me about this. It will be something that's exciting to the reviewers and the applicants. So it's something that will give you very good opportunity to discuss on your interview, which is always important. Yeah.
Maybe a related question. Can you also talk about the type of publications? So whether it's case reports and abstracts, etc.
Yeah.
Give us an idea of
exactly
how that works.
Yeah. So there's a spectrum. It's a very large spectrum. So some people, they don't know, is this a publication? Is this a poster? So there's a large spectrum, right? I would say the most simple and maybe less academically rewarding is a journal abstract, an abstract to a medical conference. You submit an abstract to the conference, it gets presented, it doesn't get published, it gets presented at a conference. It's still good. It's still, it's still something that's going to be a topic of conversation. It still shows that you have interest in academia, you have interest in research, you have interest in something that programs will find favorable. The next level is like a case report. It shows that you took the time to write up a case that could be interesting to other doctors, other physicians, and it's something that will be a little bit more intriguing. Better than that is a review article, like a narrative review, because that shows more a mastership and owning of a topic that you submit and publish. On top of that would be like a systematic review, meta-analysis, and retrospective study, which is an original research article, a large original research article with data that can be shared with the journal. So again, there's a spectrum. The highest level is a full manuscript, so retrospective study, meta-analysis. Under that will be like a narrative review, like a clinical review. Under that will be a case report. Under that will be an abstract for a poster as a poster presentation to a conference. All excellent. The more of the better types of research will be just maybe more intriguing for the programs when you interview and look better on your CV. Yeah.
And your research programs, you handle all three, right? Manuscripts, case reports.
Every month there's a different thing to work on of those. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the comprehensive overview. Dr. Atoot, just to wrap up the application, we spoke about the ERAS CV and the LORs. Can you shed a bit of light on personal statement? When you read the personal statement and juxtapose it with this CV, what are you looking for in the personal statement?
Yeah, honestly, the personal statement I think is very important. So first and foremost, for international graduates, it's a good measuring stick for how your English is, right? So if English is not your first language, I want to know, can you communicate well in that language, right? So the personal statement will kind of open up the window to that. If you're making very simple, silly grammatical mistakes, that may seem, that may hint that like maybe, that you can't communicate that well, right? So please make sure if you're writing a personal statement, make sure somebody who helps you with it, somebody overlooks your work, right? Double checks it, triple checks it, so to make sure there's no errors in there. Number two, poem is just essentially like why they're passionate about the field, and genuinely you want to make the personal statement personal, right? You want to make it a connection about you, your story. Some of the personal statements, like I never forget, they get itched in my mind, and sometimes the story is so like excellent that I want to meet this person, right? Like I'm genuinely like, I read it and I'm genuinely intrigued by him or her. And so I would offer them an interview, even if their CV isn't necessarily the best, just to see like if I can talk to them and get more about their story. So I would say I would not, some people try their best. They try to explain all of their red flags in their personal statement. I wouldn't dive too much into that, only because that's for the interview, right? Like if there's something obvious that you need to explain, you can explain it with a little bit, but your whole personal statement shouldn't just be you explaining like, you know, the faults of your journey, right? You really want to concentrate on the positives, concentrate on why you want to do this, what brought you to the field, and you know, we'll be more than happy to assist you with that as well. I think Poam, you help them with that.
Yes.
Yeah, and just make it as personalized as possible.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Atoot, Dr. Weissman. And as we come towards the end, I want to take the next 5 to 7 minutes to tackle some questions, which probably, you know, you can answer. So Dr. Atoot, maybe first one to you. How important is the ACLS and BLS in the CV?
Yeah, so I think that goes to this one. So I will tell you that you're going to have to do it anyway. It's not a must. It's nice to have, especially it shows that maybe you're somebody who's clinically involved, right? But it's not a must. It's not something that like we really pay too much attention to. Most of the people who do this, most of the people, the residents, we give them ACLS and BLS training before they start residency. It's part of their orientation. So I wouldn't go crazy with that. If you have it by the time you start residency in the US, then you don't have to do the training here. You can just submit it, and that's good enough. But it's not a red flag if you're missing it.
Okay. And related question on LORs. If I upload 4 LORs, will you or programs review all 4 or just any 3?
So you need 3 to apply to most programs. But if you submitted 4, we will absolutely review 4. I don't see a problem with that at all.
Okay. Then let me see. A question on research. So Dr. Weissman, will poster presentation go into the section under publications?
Yes, absolutely. Under the publication section, if you click on it on the ERAS application, and we show everybody how to do this at the end of the season, when you click on it, it says what type of research was it. It's either, you know, journal publication, a conference abstract, and you just click on, you know, poster presentation for conference, and you put in all the details they ask for. They ask for the name of the conference, the title of the abstract, and you just fill it in. So yes, it shows up there. Yes.
Yes, so just wanted to clarify, one of the classes that Dr. Weissman does take at the end of the season before you submit is how to put your research experience in the ERAS CV. So we do have step-by-step guidance on that from Dr. Weissman, just in case you're wondering. Dr. Atoot, question on step 3, a lot of questions on step 3.
Yeah.
How important is step 3? Because I think you mentioned this applicant had step 3 when he applied.
Yeah, by the way, for this applicant, let me just tell you a little bit about like the end of the story so you know how this happened. So when he came to us, he actually did not have his step 3. He came to do an externship with me, right? And he was clinically phenomenal, right? He spent, I think, 3 months with us. Throughout this time, he applied like once and didn't match. Then he came to do a rotation with us. During this 3 months window, I told him your next step is to take step 3. Okay. So he was literally studying all the time. He joined our Med Complete subscription, so like he can kind of get updated medical knowledge, and Poam will share that with you guys as well. And then he did well on step 3. He matched with us for the transitional year residency, and now he got a PGY2 internal medicine position in Chicago. So he will be going there. So the transitional year counted as his PGY1, and he will go directly to PGY2 internal medicine in July. So really happy ending for him. But you could see the step 3 made a big difference for him, right? Because without step 3, same CV, he didn't match. Then he took step 3, matched with us, and then matched into internal medicine. And even the year that he matched with us, he had 6 interviews for internal medicine. So he had a reasonable chance, right, with step 3. So for him, Poam, because he's an older graduate and his scores, you know, not necessarily the highest, step 3 is helpful. However, there are students that just come out of school now, like that are just about to graduate and have, you know, 240s and 250s. For them, step 3 is not important. I wouldn't take step 3. As a matter of fact, I think if you do poorly on step 3 with like a 240 and very good scores, it might potentially be held against you, right? that your score dropped so much. So step 3 is more for the person that has things to prove on his or her CV to improve on. Or if you're an older graduate, absolutely, you need it. I mean, it'll increase your chances a lot. So I hope that kind of made sense, Paul.
It does. Dr. Weissman, do you mind talking a bit about the course that Dr. Atoot mentioned? Very useful for maybe step 3 and even in residency.
Yep. Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. And I almost forgot to mention this. So this is something, that's been going on for a little while now. And recently, USMLE Sarthi is going to have it up on their platform. And we discussed this. So what it's actually, Dr. Atoot will talk maybe more granularly about the details. I think, well, so basically, what this is it's sort of a 12 months. So it's a full year access to medical lectures on a clinical level, sort of on the level that the residents are taught in the hospital. So it helps kind of twofold. A, helps you maybe prepare for audition rotations, prepare for clerkships, because it goes through every topic, heart failure, cellulitis, colitis, different topics, the kind of the bread and butter in internal medicine, on a kind of a question answer on a high level of where the residents are tested and interns are held responsible for. So it kind of motivates you to study it and read up on things that you don't know from those lectures. The lectures are 2 to 3 times a week. All live interactive. So you have Zoom access. You could talk to the residents on it. It's all on Zoom. And the other thing about it is that it actually will help you for residency. So once you start, you'll have a lot of information that other students may not have known, and you'll have an easier time transitioning. So it's an excellent resource that, we provide, and it's something that's could be, very, very doable on a large scale, and students can really have access to a lot of very high level lectures. So we're happy to, Pawan can answer more details about that if there's interest. Yeah.
And I think the important thing also is for prospective applicants, networking with the current residents. If they are in the same cohort as other residents, it may help them in their journey.
Sure. Yeah, I think Pawan, I think most of the externs that come with us, they end up joining this. I think Areej, if I'm not mistaken, also joined before she left our rotation, and maybe she can also tell you a little bit about it. But essentially, we want you to, like, when I was in, when I was in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I'm sure Simca's the same thing. My father used to always get the curriculum for next year and make me study it like in the summer. Right. So I'm ready for like the school year. So I've always like thought of that. And I was like, well, is there something that we could do to prepare students for residency before they come? And essentially, this allows the extern to sit through the same education we're giving the resident. So like we're streaming the same lecture we're giving the residents every week. You can join live, no matter which part of the country you're in, and participate. Areej, do you want to like talk about it a little bit while you're in it?
Yes, it's actually, there's 2 lectures every week on Thursday and Friday morning. And, sometimes because of the time difference, I end up just re-listening to the audio lectures, which is amazing. So you can listen to it from anywhere throughout the world. And it's such an excellent program. I've done Kaplan. I've done, I've done several. I'm blanking out. And I want to say Dr. Atoot's program is rival to all these programs, because I've done step 1, step 2, step 3, and I still went in there and there was so much that I was still learning. And I love how he goes through the breakdown of every answer, why it's the right answer, how can you learn, how could this be rewritten so that the wrong answer is the correct answer. So it's very important. I would say if you are going into residency, you're going to gain a lot from it. And it's really you do it at your own time, and there's no reason not to get it, because it's only 2 hours, but you learn so much, and it's on an ongoing basis. So it keeps you refreshed. And another thing is, it's along with other residents. What I felt is that I always felt inspired. Like when you're studying and you're studying for step 2 or step 3, sometimes you just have to like be your own motivator. And versus when you're sitting there on a Zoom call, or you're joining the lectures, you kind of feel inspired and pushed because there's other residents that you see that are in the same game. So it gives you that motivation. That to me, I felt like is a step up to, just learning on your own. So definitely a great program. It's excellent. Don't hesitate, guys, and try it out. There's nothing to hurt. It's not going to hurt you. It's only going to benefit you. Medicine is layering. So the more you learn, the more exposure you get, the more you're gonna benefit. And thank you, Dr. Atoot.
Thanks, Areej.
All right, Dr. Atoot, maybe the last question before we wrap up, as we are over time. My visa has been rejected twice. I want to do tele-rotations. So are tele-rotations going to be important in the upcoming match?
Yes. So telemedicine is something that's engraved in every residency program now. Most of the lectures that we do are on tele. And so I will tell you, an in-person rotation obviously is better for everybody, right? Like they'll get to know you better, you'll get more hands-on experience, or like more experience for you to see how system functions. However, if you can't come in person, doing a tele-rotation is an excellent second option, because it shows the team that, listen, despite these barriers that are out of my hand, I couldn't get a visa. That's not something you can control. I still went out of my way to get US clinical experience. I still went out of my way to impress faculty and secure strong LORs. I mean, that's phenomenal, right? You know, and everybody will respect that. And I think the rotation that we provide, and it's not the only one, there's many tele rotations out there, but the one that we provide, I think, is customized to give you the highest level of clinical knowledge. But if you don't do it with us, any one of them, I would make sure you have some clinical experience on your CV, tele or not.
Thank you. And yes, we are enrolling for next month's tele-rotation, as well as the research course by Dr. Weissman, which incidentally starts on the 30th of this month. So with that, I'm sorry.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to touch base on this tele. So it's the ones that we do is for internal medicine, but we've gotten a lot of demand from people who want to do anesthesia, radiology. So we've actually went out and found our excellent preceptors. One is from University of Pennsylvania for radiology. So that's like an Ivy League letterhead. You know, that's very competitive. He's a very, very esteemed doctor. So you could sign up through Sarthi for that, a tele rotation in radiology if that's your interest. And then for anesthesia as well, we have some strong faculty from Hackensack, from our hospital, that also volunteered their time, who will do anesthesia, and I think that will be starting this week.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Atoot, for bringing it up. In fact, you can go to our website and look up all the tele-rotations there. They are excellent from Dr. Atoot and his team. So with that, I just want to give one kind of shot to all the panelists. So starting with Pelumi, you know, what is your top advice to other co-applicants who may be going into the match this season? So if you were to give them one piece of advice, Pelumi. You're on mute.
All right. So yes, one advice I would say is you should pay attention to program research. You should research your programs thoroughly so that you not make mistakes with your application to these programs. Yes, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Seunguo, what would be your top kind of recommendation or recommendations to the applicants?
Yeah, I think I have a similar thought that like you have to start early, research the programs wisely. I mean, I made a mistake that I sent a letter, application to one program. I got an invite, but missed that they don't offer the visa. So I have to cancel the interview with them. So those kind of mistakes. So make sure you do the thorough research and then start early so you can build up.
Thank you. Areej, I know you will have a lot of recommendations. So what are your top 2 or 3?
Well, I think for once, what I feel like I would have benefited from is if I had a mentor. So just to give you an example, I didn't know something such as USMLE Sarthi exists, but when you enroll with them, they actually give you a free review of your application and your red flags and where to improve, where to start. So that's really helpful. Getting a mentor, whether it's Sarthi or somebody that you know, or program director, or someone like Dr. Weissman, who's been on a residency panel, somebody who can tell you, this is what you need to do. And work on these red flags, or you might not have red flags. You might have stellar scores, but you need guidance. Something like for example, for my rotations, for my electives, I did neurology, infectious disease, research, dermatology. It was kind of all over. In my head, I was thinking, I want to do internal medicine. So let me do all of internal medicine and see what I like. But no, if you want to focus on one thing, you have to pick a couple, like 2 or 3 internal medicine focused rotations with, like, let's say, like what Dr. Atoot mentioned, with a program director, where the letter of recommendation would weigh heavier. So something like that. Don't be shy. I think for me, I was always hesitant or embarrassed of my application and my background. And all I did is hold myself back. Sarthi, USMLE Sarthi is not going to judge you. They're there to help you. Dr. Atoot, Dr. Weissman, they're there to move you further. So don't be embarrassed. I think for me, I held myself back so many times for so long because I was embarrassed and not proud of where I was in the journey. And I only held myself back. I wish I got into USMLE Sarthi sooner and got that guidance. Like even Dr. Atoot at one point sat me down and said, if you don't match with us, this is what you need to do. Like people want to help you. Put yourself out there. Don't hesitate and get a mentor, get guidance, guys. Do it early on. Do it if you're still in med school. And that way you're not looking back and wasting time and years trying to figure out your way. Thank you.
Thank you, Areej. Dr. Weissman, one top piece of advice for the season?
Yeah. So I think one of the best advice I can give is start early. A lot of times we see scrambling. Students are saying, okay, I'm going to come to the United States. I'm going to do a month or 2 of observership, rotation, clerkship. And then, their visa doesn't get approved. And then it's like, August and even September. And they're like, okay, I want to get one letter in before the match. So that's kind of behind the 8 ball, right? You sort of want to start now. I would have started maybe even January, February, but at least March, April, get started. If you need a letter of recommendation from a U.S. doctor, come early, start early. If you're not sure if you're going to get a visa, at least do a tele-rotation, set it up so that you can get some letters to start collecting in April, May, before the very, very busy season, because comes July, August, there might not be a spot for you. Things get booked up very quickly around the summertime. So get started early. The earlier, especially with the research, it takes 3-4 months to publish. So if you want to publish before ERAS opens up, or at least submit it before ERAS, so don't wait till August, September to start working on a research project. Start in April, May, so that when that time comes, you'll already have your everything checked out. So that's sort of just advice I can give.
Thank you. Dr. Atoot, we have a lot of questions, but we'll probably take it in another webinar. And audience, you can send us the questions by email as well. But Dr. Atoot, if you could close off the session for us with your tips for the applicants.
Honestly, it's exactly what Dr. Weissman just said. You want to prepare early. I'm a hardcore believer that the number one reason people don't match is lack of preparation, lack of understanding the system, lack of understanding the timelines. You should not, for example, get your step 2 score in October or November. That's lack of planning. You want to have everything before, right? Make sure you have your LORs before the match. You want that your chances as an IMG drop tremendously for the match if you apply late rather than you apply on time. So that means for you want to make sure you are doing your rotations, your research, you're getting your LORs way before the match so that everything is ready by September and you apply on day 1. I think Sarthi has an excellent platform and they've done an excellent job to help many IMGs match. So hopefully we'll continue to do it for the years to come. And if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to us and we'll see you guys in the next event.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atoot. Thank you to all my panelists. This was very, very helpful. And to our audience, we'll log off now. We'll be live for a couple of minutes so that you can grab the links. But yes, let us know if we can help in any way in rotations, research, and other aspects, both tele-rotations, on-site rotations, or research. So thank you all and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.